We found many archetypes which have some images. Specifically, when the first one was used, modern Armenia, and also we found that it could have some developments in the last 8 years. We found many archetypes. I will make my presentation in English.
Ideas about society are almost always expressed through individual images. The city in human form first appeared in Hellenic art, but its iconographical roots date back to earlier times. Social welfare can be associated with deified figures such as Tyche or successive heroes of state power. Artists created these characters similar to heroes or demigods, possibly initially standing between divine and human sphere. Here you can see the image
Recording in progress.
from Artashat. And Holy City could be portrayed as male or female figure, while female image was more prevailing. Close connection with male figure of Demos reflects ambivalent character of urban culture. Polis can be understood as principal unit of Greek society in whole antiquity. Personification of polis understood as broad and diverse social, geographical, and political phenomenon can be approached by an analysis of archaeological and written sources. Defining polis in miscellaneous Hellenistic society is a complex task, especially when socio-historical context is not directly reflected by individual archaeological finds and detailed historical data. Uniform definition could not be appropriate as meaning and function of polis change. Classical authors largely defined polis as community and territory, while autonomy and independence were obligatory. Analysis of the mythical and ritual text of ancient West showed that cities were often identified with male characters, described as women, as virgins, and so on. Human image as a personification of a country, a land, a city can be seen in Armenian highlands for the first time in the iconography of the Hittite and Urartian kingdoms, where the enthroned patron goddess was a symbol of fortress and the guarantee of fortune of city. The inscription of Maher's door mentions a number of deities who are the patrons of mountains, countries, and seas. The goddess Tushpoe was considered as a symbol and the patron goddess of the impregnable fortress of the city Tushpa Van. In the Armenian tradition, the city of Van was built by Shamiram or Semiramis. It was called Semiramake, which provides the basis not only for the identification of Shamiram with Tushpoe, but also for the identification of images of the city patron goddesses with queens. Comparative analysis of cuneiform data show that in the kingdom of Van, queens were also considered to be the viceroys of the goddesses on earth, their supreme priests often appearing in similar images. And here you can see such images in basilic rocks. In this regard, the analysis of the image of a woman as an allegory of the city in the context of biblical tradition is very remarkable. From the point of view of revealing the peculiarities of the iconography of the patron goddess of the country or the city, we consider extremely important Vladimir Toparov's observation. The author clearly shows that there are two types of cities in cultural text. A, cities protected by the virgin goddess of war, and B, cities engaging in trade under the patronage of the mother goddess. During the war, the city had not have a strong defense system. The gates of the city were closed by the goddess. And during the merchantry, the gates of the city were opened. The patron goddess ensured fertility, the patronage of the city. And Vladimir Toparov divided them into two types. A, prodigal cities, B, virgin cities. The example of the first city was Babylon in the image of a prostitute with the closed gates of the gods. And the second is heavenly Jerusalem in the image of the bride with the open gates. These two opposing characters, according to the researcher, are the two sides of the mother goddess which ensured her wellness period of eternity. We had the same cultural image in Armenia from the Urartian period until yet, as the patron goddess of the country, the city. One of such heroic characters for Armenia is summed up in idea of Mother Armenia, the capital, the hero. However, the image of Mother City Goddess has come a long way in our country before it turned into the image of the capital, starting from the heroines of Mother City Goddess, who were presented as a humanized, personified images of Armenia. If we will start from the beginning, then from the point of view of iconography, the goddess of the capital as the patron saint of the country originated in Armenia from ancient times and bore the stamp of the Hellenistic period. And Tigran the Great presented Antiochia or Tuche as his patron deity in order to legitimize his authority and emphasize his divine nature. The cult of the mother goddess was also spread in Armenia during Hellenism, which was compared to Anahit, who during the Artaxerxes period from the time of Tigran the Great was depicted on the reverse of the royal coins as the king's mother guardian. As the patron saint of Artashat, she was also associated with Tuche Antiochia, whose statue was erected near Antioch on a hill on the banks of the Orontes River during the Seleucid period. Tuche, the image of city goddess, later became a prototype for the representation of queens on Armenian coins. And such examples we have from Artashat. And here you can see such a depiction with Tigran the Great. And we call them Artashat city goddess, found from Artashat as well as coins brought from Cilicia, Damascus, Tigranakert, Delphi, Antioch. Dozens of coins with the half-face of Queen Erato were found from the ancient site of Artashat, on the obverse of which she is presented with her hair gathering on the neck. And here you can see such a city goddess, and this is representation of Erato. On the reverse, the model of the city of Artashat's defense wall, and she is the defender and she is guardian of the city. This is also a vivid proof of the comparison of the images of the queens with the goddess of the capital and identification with Artashat as the patron and guardian of the city. Now let's try to find the prototypes of these cities or regions depicting in the image of capital city goddesses representing as a woman. As it is known, presenting the homeland in the form of mother or female is a common pictorial metaphor and can be appealed to wider and archaic idea of motherland. Alexander the Great in 3031, after the famous victory of Arbela, ordered a sculpture, the reconstruction of which was presented in Rome for the palace of Chigi, and here you can see the sculpture depicts the dream of Achaemenid Queen Atossa through the personifications of ancient women in the image of Europe and Asia, facing the famous type of capital goddesses with the mural crown with the inscription Europe and Asia. As twin sisters, they hold a shield depicting the victory of Macedonian troops at the famous Battle of Arbela. It is noteworthy, however, that in the turbulent historical periods of Armenia, these goddesses were represented in different semantics. After the elaboration of the Roman Empire's world ideology, the goddess of fortune and the goddess of victory were presented as symbols of defeated countries. And here you can see defeated Asian countries, and one of them is also Armenia. During the reign of Augustus and during the Julian-Claudian period, the allegories of cities and lands are usually presented as a symbol of defeated country in the form of woman with a mural crown on her head, which is often found in mosaics, coins, and sculptures. Numerous examples have been found from the Hellenistic period when the city was represented by a woman in the company of rivers and lakes. The personification of Armenia was also represented on the Roman coins ordered by Trajan between the allegories of Tigris and Euphrates male rivers. And here you can see such a coin. In the territory of Cilicia, as in other parts of Armenia, the cult of the goddess of capital was widespread, who as the goddess of fortune was often met with examples of both coins and sculptures. In the late 1930s, archaeologists from Princeton University found an ancient mosaic of the goddess Cilicia from the territory of the ancient Armenian city Cilicia Mausoleum, where she is, this is from Adana. Now it is kept in our National Museum, and you can see there. And this is goddess Cilicia, and with inscription Cilicia, corona muralis on her head. She is depicting in the contemporary dress of an ancient woman sitting under a tree, facing the personification of a Mesopotamian woman depicting next to her, from which part of her leg and part of cornucopia has been preserved. Beside her was Euphrates, Tigris, Ceyhan, Tarson rivers. Two of that names have not been kept. And here you can see one part of cornucopia. The image of the beloved mother city goddess woman as Armenian personification is known to us from the Ark of Traian in Benvenuto's reliefs. And this is this relief, where she is kneeling on one foot before Roman Emperor Trajan on the image of Tyche, goddess between Tigris and Euphrates River. The picture of the fallen Armenian personification between two rivers is also reflected on Roman coins depicting Trajan. Tyche as a symbol of defeated Armenia also was represented on Diocletianus and Maximus' triumphal arch sculptural compositions. His restored and the newly represented image we can see in Via Lata program, and the remaining sculpture moulds are stored now in Rome on the Capitolinian Museum, which is attributed to Diocletian and Maximus. And here you can see another Armenia as Tyche, mother city goddess. And one of the heroic images of the city for Armenia is summed up in the idea of motherland. The image of Mother Armenia first emerged as a symbol of the national liberational movement. His subsequent revival also lived in the medieval Armenian culture, with the image of loyal Armenian noblewoman under his jaw as poster on 19th century by Janik Aramian on 1862 that was kept in France, and it was written by an artist, writer, publicist, and reformer of the Armenian alphabet. His composition was published in an improved form in the August 16 in 1861 in Paris Weekly. And here you can see the poster was called Spirit of Armenia, Mother Armenia, Armenia, or Ruins of Ani, or I Mourn for You, Armenia. It became the first example of an Armenian poster on the theme of patriotic struggle, presenting Mother Armenia as a disparate crying woman sitting on the ruins, outlining the basis of the Ararat-Arak's perspective, surrounded by the ruins of 12 historical Armenian capitals, Armavir, Artashat, Dvin, Ani, Kars, Van, Bagar, Shapat, etc. And here you can see another representation. And as well the ruins of the shrine of the goddess Anahit in Artashat, the shrine of Vahagan in Ashtishat, the mother cathedral of Echmiadzin. In the middle of them, the artist placed the seated image of a young Armenian woman in a sitting position in a costume dedicated by the Renaissance goddesses. In the foreground of the painting, the artist placed Bel's armor, the Ashrakuni dynasty flag, the Artaxerxes crown with the image of eagles, a spear, a dagger, an arrow, and bow. Mother Armenia became one of the most popular figures in Armenian iconography of the 19th and 20th century, meaning the historical Western Armenia. This example then was depicted on Edelbesim carpet stamps, postcards. And here you can see one of them now is kept in Sardarabad. And Armenian queens as Spirit of Armenia. Every discourse on female allegory in general and female character in war, memorabilia in particular, implies another aspect. The relationship of the human body to the state, which is a highly gendered one. It is noteworthy that this tradition was so deeply rooted in 19th century that it was reborn in Soviet art since 1945. Even the two world wars of 20th century did not eliminate the woman's ideals and her powerful worship. After the end of the war, the entire Soviet Union began to stop the motherland and women's personalities, symbolizing the freedom of the country. The monument of victory, imaginating the feminist differences of the nation-state of the 19th century, show the weakly point that still exists in the idea of citizenship. These monuments are dedicating to the memory of men, although they use the beauty of the female body in their content. In the Soviet Union, Motherland and Victory Monument were praised for the patriotic war. By recording the consequences of the war memorials, according to Barbara Correll, played a special role. By sacralizing military forces and cautioning the issue of the material body by means of eradication of mystification, they produced that national sovereign subject. From the national patriotic point of view, it is the masculine body sacrificed, mostly voluntarily, on the altar of the fatherland. And this body fundamentally underlies any victim discourse to which the relationship of the female body to the state, on the other hand, is quite differently constructed since women had no access to the military forces and could not sacrifice their body on the altar. They were expected to provide the patria with sons whose body was then offered on this altar and whose death later could be mourned by the wives, mothers. And the living condition of women in the 19th century, says Ruth Roach Pearson. Because military service was the key to full citizenship and promise of extended civil rights, women were excluded from the state political scheme, but they were not excluded from the national embrace. Nonetheless, the women saw themselves after the Great War, again firmly in the national embrace, was portrayed in monuments as a nameless mourning mother on the nation or as a triumphal Nike, once again proving its suitability as a figure for patriotic heroes or sacrifices. In Armenia, since the most ancient times, the mother goddesses and virgin warriors were identified with the homeland and were considered as patronesses and keeper guardians of the native earth and the country. During development, that antique female allegory of Armenia revives in monuments by Ara Harutyunyan, here you can see, Ara Sarkisyan, in the image of Anahit Adibek Grigoryan's Mother Armenia, and Bertashen Mother Armenia. Now it is in Artsakh, in Martuni region. Prototype of the image Mother Armenia, which first appeared in Rome as a symbol of defeated country over the centuries, has become a symbol of victory and became the mother and guardian of the nation in new and modern period. Armenian nation that survived the genocide, survived the massacres, suffered wars, earthquakes, and are still on the stage of geopolitical developments in the east and the west. For our people, the image of the city became multi-faced. First, if we try to typify image of the city in us, it came in four types. A is the mother goddess, the symbol of the victorious country. B is an image of a defeated city or country represented by Rome. And here we have such a representation. C is Armenia as personification of Armenia mourning in the ruins of Ani. And D is Mother Armenia as a symbol of the spirit of war and defender of the city country. The other important aspect refers to the dual-faced image of the city as the motherland and fatherland. We see this approach from Hellenism as demos, people, and polis, city. The symbol of capital in our popular perception is considered Yerevan after the First Republic of Armenia, and as fatherland we consider Gyumri, Alexandropol. In the sacred and holy religious city image, we have Echmiadzin, Vagashapat, Khorvirab, Dvin, Sis. Ani and Kars became the symbols of lost Western Armenia. Cilicia, Tarsus, and Romgla became the royal cities of the Renaissance and symbols of homeland. However, in this respect, it is noteworthy that the ruins of Ani became a symbol of the lost homeland in the collective image of all cities of Western Armenia. Ani was associated with the Armenian style. Artashat Garni I was the capital of art and the royal residency. Erebuynu Yerevan is still considered city of sun and capital. Gyumri is a cultural capital which after 1988 earthquake became a mourning city and mainly associated with the ruins of Ani. The other cultural capital, Shushi, the center in Artsakh, which became a symbol of the whole lost Artsakh in 2020, in the psychology of our people was identified with the history of occupation of Kars. Thus, according to the functions, we can classify the image of cities. A, capitals of sun as commerce, production. B, cities of education, enlightenment, art, culture. C, religious cities and centers. And D, lost territories, mourning cities, symbolizing Armenia's mourning. The prototype of the iconography of the capital, which first originated from the Greeks, was transformed over the centuries, became a symbol of victory in the new and modern eras, the guardian mother of the people. The image of the capital did not lose its traditional description among the people during its development. It is connected with the militant image of the mother goddess rooted in the national self-consciousness. And here you can see the last image, see Mother City Goddess from Archaeology. Thank you very much.